Welcome to the Linux Saloon, a place to discuss tech, open source, and where Linux is always on tap. How is everybody?
Groovy.
Yeah. Excellent.
Excellent. So I have no idea if some of that conversation was going out over the stream while we were getting ready, but
Yeah, sorry about that.
well, I muted it, but I didn't unmute it, so I don't know what I did wrong. But nonetheless, here we are. We've made it. It's another Saturday night, and we're going to be talking about something I think is very exciting, something I had tons of fun with, and that is antiX Linux. Then we're also going to do, we're going to check on what's in the menu for next week. We're going to do a news flight, our last call. But before that, I would like to go around the saloon and see what someone's been doing in Linux. Colin usually has something, maybe Sleepy. If not, I know I have something.
I had a viewer request during the week. You're probably all familiar with Johan. Most people know Johan. He's always in live chats. I'm pretty sure he's always in our Linux Saloon chat as well.
He might be.
He wanted to. He asked me if I could check out how to install. What is it? Dock-like plugin for XFCE on Peppermint. He said he was having a hard time. Dock-like. It's a plugin. It's a dock-like plugin. It just had some dependency nightmares. That's one of those things where you, when you're trying to make and build the downloaded, you know how you do the make and the make install and all that.
Right. Is that the one they have on GitHub?
Yeah, and
I was looking at that because it's the one MX uses.
Yeah, it just kept coming up with the dependency, need this dependency. So I've managed to make a bash script for him so he can just run that and the whole thing will install, download and everything. So I've managed to do it in a VirtualBox anyway, but that was interesting. Chasing dependencies.
How bad of dependency chasing was it? Like on a scale of what? Like on a scale of 1 to I want to beat my head against the desk. Where would it lie in that? I'm not sure what number I want to beat my head against the desk, but whatever.
No, it was probably about 5. I would say it wasn't that bad, but it was mostly running the configure file to make it. And then it would say it needed this dependency. So it depends whether it's in the repositories or you got to go searching for it and find out what you got to install to get that dependency. So that 5 or 6, I think.
May I ask what OS he was installing it?
On Peppermint.
Oh wow, that's what I'm trying to do.
You what, the doc-like one or?
Yeah.
Well, I've already uploaded the bash script to GitHub, my GitHub account. So I'm creating a video for this. So
please do.
Yeah, and then you'll see what
there is interest in that thing.
Yeah, I've already got it running. So I'll create a video and people can make up their minds whether they actually want to install it or not. Yeah, it's an interesting project.
Well, that's excellent. Now, what is your ultimate goal, like when doing this? Like, what do you want to achieve? Like when?
Well, Johan wanted to install it, so the goal was for me to try and get it to install.
Okay.
And then remember how I actually installed it. So instead of Johan having to go through the pain and suffering of searching for dependencies, I've made him a bash script. So all he has to do is just type the command of the bash script file, and it'll do all the magic for Johan, and it'll install it on his system. So it just depends whether that's what he wants to do. But I'll make a video and showcase the thing first, just in case maybe Johan might not be happy with it. He might not want to install it. So
I like that you're doing these, what I think are more advanced user activities, because these are things like I would never even think to tackle, like at all.
There are things that I try to tackle, but like Colin is saying, you run into this dependency hell. Next thing you know, you have to download another package and build that package to get the dependency for the package you're trying to build. This gets like 3 layers deep sometimes.
Yeah, that's right. I found that there was a lot of development. So there's a package with the same name, but it'll have .dev at the end, which is a development package. So, and there was a lot to do with the XFCE panel with developments. So it must be like something that's in development, obviously, and then you can use that to upgrade probably the panel or something to accept this application or plugin.
My perception of this particular dock-like app is it takes the long bar that's like Windows XP-ish across the bottom and turns it into boxes with dots or whatever you set it for, like
That's
Windows
correct.
7.
That's correct.
Yeah,
Yes,
I want my hands on that.
And it's got Windows previews as well. So you hover over it and it gives you a preview, and then it'll give you another preview on top or whatever. So
Oh man, stop it! I'm drooling.
You can't have that. It's not sanitary. I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think
really
so
neat
too.
things you're doing, Colin. That's really super cool.
Thanks.
Well, good deal. Anybody else have anything exciting they'd like to share with the class? I mean, with the saloon.
I have more of a silly question than anything.
Oh, I love silly questions. I mean,
okay. So I decided to try to do a thin client. Why? Because why not, right?
yeah, no, I think that's interesting.
Yeah, right. So I use Proxmox.
Okay.
Does anybody recommend another one for me to try next?
So, well, how did before you abandoned the Proxmox ship? How did it go?
Excellent. It is absolutely fantastic. I loved it 100%. Why not try another one, right?
Sure, but before we get to the other one, I have a silly question. All right, so that's something I've thought about too, is like a thin client, because I have like some machines that they don't really need a hard drive, just a thing. So how did you implement do like the PXE boot on the computer itself? Then it searches for a specific address, or how does that?
I launched it in a web browser.
Okay.
So I just had to connect to the IP address. So if I was in any computer, I could easily, launch to a web browser and do it. But you're right. You're supposed to do exactly what you said. And I started doing that on my Raspberry Pi to be able to launch to it. I got it to work once. But unfortunately, the second time I tried it to make it, more streamlined and try to remember my dependency hells and all the other stuff, I made a mistake and I couldn't get it to work the second time. But at least I tried. And then so I was having a great time with it. And then I go, well, maybe I should try another one. Maybe that'll help me learn some of the things that I did wrong with this one. You know what I mean? And I was just curious what everybody else tried, or they never tried one before, or this is boring, or whatever.
It's something I've quite literally never even, I attempted it once probably like 10, 12 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I was banging my head against the wall and I said, well, I'm not doing the wall any good. Certainly not doing my head any better. So that was the end of it.
Yeah, it was pretty straightforward. I did it in VirtualBox first to test it out. And within an hour, I watched Network Check. I can post the link that I watched.
Absolutely. Yeah, post that link. That'd be great.
I watched that video. He's really good. I mean, he seems to really try hard. So, and I watched that video and I had it up and running with, like I said, within a half hour.
That's fantastic.
But I just wanted to know if there was something else out in the market that I should be looking at.
Outside of hand rolling it, I have no idea how else you do it.
Okay.
But I don't know if anyone else has anyone else tried doing a thin client setup? No, I hear crickets.
No.
I don't network my computers together.
You don't?
I'm like the Battlestar Galactica. They never network their computers together because of the Cylons.
Right. Okay. That's fantastic.
You never linked them together, Dan? You never used Barrier?
No. I don't need to. Everything I need to transfer from one machine to another, easily I can unplug a hard drive and go shove it in another one, or, that's the mega USB way for me.
So you like the sneaker net?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I think, I don't know, Dan. I don't know that I could do that, honestly, because proximity wise, I guess if everything was like literally right next to you, that might make sense.
It is pretty much, it's plug and play within reach of everything in this room. The only computer that's remote is the one out on the TV.
Gotcha.
And I don't even
Yeah.
use that one anymore because I just use my laptop to watch TV.
I guess for me, a file server has been like a constant thing for 20 years more, or yeah, at this point. Like I've had a file server in my house. I mean, between my wife, yeah, like she backs stuff up from her computer to the file server, and we have shared media there, like music and movies, and yeah, I mean, I guess it's just a different approach, but yeah, like a network for me is really important. So that's interesting.
I've got a sharing files story.
Okay.
There you go.
So I've got a prop as well. So I've been sharing files on my home sort of network for a really long time now, even before I even had a router. The first little piece of networking hardware I got was this. It's a network hub. I don't know if you can see that,
Yes.
but it was
Looks
interesting
more like a
because
cassette.
it was powered by this cord. If anyone remembers that.
Oh,
One of these old keyboard AT connectors.
AT plugs.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's how old this is.
A DIN connector.
And eventually I got a little PS2 adapter for it too. I don't know if you can see that. Right. And this thing, it's a hub, so it's not even a router. All it does is just, as it sends data, it blankets the entire network. And so if you have a machine in one room and another machine in another room set up to send and receive, that's how you use it. And I think if I remember correctly, I used this to share an internet connection, dial-up connection between myself and my sister on the old Windows. Maybe it was 3.1, maybe it was 95. I can't remember that anymore, but yeah, that's my file sharing story.
Awesome
I don't know
stuff.
how I would exist without like having everything on the network. I'm very spoiled in that way. I mean, because I use SyncThing to keep all my files synchronized. So like sometimes I'll start something here, and then I decide I want to go, finish in the house. So I'll just save it, close it. I go to I go to the house, and then I'm on my laptop there, and all the files are there. Everything is there. It's like, I'm like I haven't changed machines. Obviously I have, but
So we've covered all the different types of network here. We've got the centralized, like I do with a central server, and all of the files go there and the clients connect to it. Nate's doing a distributed network where he's syncing all of the files to multiple clients. And Dan's not doing any. So there you go.
Yeah. Is there another type? Does someone have a token ring network? Does someone have that going still?
Yeah, right, where it has to pass from each one.
Right.
Right.
Well, how does SyncThing work? How does that work? Does that go to one spot? SyncThing, it goes to one spot, or it's connected, it's installed on all your computers, and it just pulls the data from one central location? Is that how it works?
You can set it up different ways, but
Right.
good, Nate.
So the way I have it set up is with SyncThing, I have every computer sees every other computer. They all have like shared keys essentially, and they've permitted each other to be able to share directories. And so I have specific directories that I have shared on all the machines. And so when I do a thing, now let's say in the documents, let's say I'm updating a spreadsheet on how many eggs the chickens laid today, and I save it, it automatically synchronizes to all the machines that are sharing that same directory. And then as one machine gets it, and I'm not sure exactly, I don't know like how they're actually being shared, but it's basically like BitTorrent and how they're sharing the files. So they're the more nodes you have, the faster things could go between the machines.
So you're not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Right. Any one of my machines could blow up, and except for this one here, I'd be really sad if it did. But if the others blow up, I have all my data is backed up. If my server blows up, I still most of the things are synchronized. Like maybe like not my deep archive, those are not. But everything else, I mean, any current files, any of my records, those are all synchronized. So things I would lose would be like video backups, B-roll, all the stuff that I've used for previous videos, or audio stuff that I've just held on to because I'm a digital pack rat. But I have a lot of space yet to go there, and I have a lot of movies on there too. I've been buying Blu-rays and ripping them to MB. So
I just keep an extra drive at a relative's house in his safe, and swap them out once in a while.
So my next ambition there, and this is not this is not what I have been going on, but is I'm going to set up another complete parity with my server, and it will just basically synchronize, and they'll be in different buildings here on the property so that it's always synchronizing with the server. I'm not sure. There are different ways of doing it. I'm probably going to do sync thing, but someone would probably tell me to use Btrfs send, but I don't know how to do that, and so I'm just going to use what I know. I mean, if I were, a mature user, Linux user like Colin, I'd probably like do a script or something of value.
Hey, I'm still learning. Still learning.
Like I said, if I were maybe smart and ambitious like Colin, I would probably do I'd probably do something really cool, but I just want something I know that will work, that I can synchronize everything. So that's my goal there.
So I'm gonna go in the opposite direction.
Okay.
All this file server and everything. There's a website called Snapdrop, and you go there with any two computers, your phone, tablet, or something, and you can transfer files that way within your network. You just have to point both devices to the same website, and that's it. You should be able to see each other and then share files that way.
What is this? What is this?
Share,
what is this?
ShareDrop.net. I put it in YouTube.
Snapdrop.
I've been using.
I mean, Snapdrop.net. Sorry, yeah.
I've been using Warpinator, which is
the
a
Linux Mint.
Linux Mint thing, but I'm not on Linux Mint. I use it on other distributions, and that's proven to be very handy for getting files from my phone. Like I'll record video on my phone and then need to get it onto my computer, and that's proven to be a very effective, simple way to do it.
I think I tried that and I couldn't get it to connect. I can't remember why. Does that use Samba or uses something else?
No,
You would have to be in the same network though. If you're not in the same network, it's not gonna be able to see each other.
correct.
Yeah, no, I'm on the same network. I was trying to use it within the home network, but I don't know. I think maybe I just didn't have it set up properly. That's all. I don't know if any of you remember. Do you remember an application called? Now I'm talking Windows here, but there was an application called Briefcase. Does anyone remember that?
Yes, I remember that.
I do vaguely, but I never used it.
And that used to sync. Used to put stuff. I think it used to put the briefcase on a USB, and it would, when you plugged it into your computer,
no.
it would sync everything straight away. Huh? No.
That's for your contacts, right, or something? Contacts, emails.
You use one of these, Colin.
You're right.
No.
Yeah,
Was
I'm quite sure.
Yeah,
It's
that's
that long
from
ago.
Windows 98 XP era when
Yeah.
them things were still alive.
XP, I think.
Yeah, I think
Or- it
maybe
could have
toward
been
the end of
98.
it. I think it was 95, 98 when that came out. I think that was pretty old, and I thought that was super cool.
Hmm.
But I never actually used it.
I actually have a drive for that.
I did for a while. I was synchronizing my stuff using rsync, like between work and home, when I with a job I had a couple of employers ago, and that yes, Cat Daddy, I own a save icon. It's like a 3D printed one, maybe. Anyway, but I used a drive and rsync to keep things synchronized, before I knew about sync thing, and that was probably 10 years ago, more 10, 12 years ago. So yeah, that's funny stuff. Did you use Briefcase, Colin?
Yes, I did.
Okay, with a USB drive.
I'm pretty sure I did. Yes.
I don't think you
some
did.
of some of the Windows XP machines, I have one in the closet, a single core. It has USB like 1 or 2 in the front of it.
That's pretty impressive.
because I used to do a lot of documents. I used to be secretary of a sports club. I used to do a lot of documents, and I had to keep, and I was on sort of different machines, and I had to try and keep them synced up. So that was quite good, because if I worked on it somewhere else and I came home and then it synced up, it was all done. So that was pretty handy, I remember.
Did the briefcase encrypt your files on your USB stick?
Nah,
Probably
I
not.
don't think so. No, it didn't. Not that I know of. Not that I can remember.
So it was just a tool to shuttle your data to a USB or floppy.
Yeah, it was. Yes.
Just copy and paste.
I don't think it was even copy and paste. I think it just used to sync it up. I can't remember how it worked.
I think somehow, like it, if I remember correctly, and I could be wrong, and I don't mind being wrong. I'm good at being wrong. In fact, I'm a pro at being wrong. But I think what it was is when you identified it in the briefcase, I believe, if I remember correctly, that it was like it flagged it on your directory. So you would, before you would shut down, there was I think there was some sort of an interface, I think, that you would select to synchronize it or whatever, and then when you got home, then you could synchronize it again through the briefcase.
Yeah, I think it was something like that, to be honest. Yeah.
So it was a neat idea, and that's basically what I did with a USB drive in rsync some time ago in a script that I wrote. But yeah, that's really neat, and that's one of those neat things that Windows actually did. And as a side note, I watched this really neat presentation of it was the release of Windows 95, and I wish I could I should have saved that YouTube link, but if I find it before the end of the show, I'll share it. But it was such a great they made Windows 95 look fun, and Bill Gates was his awkward self, and they had Jay Leno on there. It was all very funny, and Jay Leno did a lot of ribbing that was just incredibly funny. But it was the release of Yannick. I don't know if you know Yannick, the French guy from Switzerland. He shared that link with me, and I was laughing really hard. It's a pretty long presentation, but I guess I had forgotten that Windows 95 was such a revolutionary change in the PC experience. But
yeah, it was a huge leap from having some kind of Windows that was having a DOS underneath to actually going into a Windows operating system.
And apparently it was also much more efficient, memory efficient too. It managed memory a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know for sure because I didn't really use Windows 3, 1, and Windows 95 really all that much. So
I've got Windows 3.1. Who's typing?
They're typing really hard. Whoever that is.
I don't think I can ever do that.
I've got Windows 3.1, 95, 98. I've got them all as, because the floppy disks I made as ISOs. I don't remember how I did that, but I've got them on the computer. So I could probably just hook them up onto VirtualBox anytime and probably install it. I don't know if it would do that now, but...
Yeah, Run with the Dolphin just hit it. Cue the Rolling Stones. Yeah, they use the Rolling Stones song. Like what is it? What was the song called? I can't remember. But it's a fun presentation, and I think if SUSE or Red Hat did something like that, I mean nobody would care, but it'd be something.
Start me up.
Yeah, start me up.
Yeah, what Colin said, start. I don't know if that's is that the same word?
Start me up.
That's what runs with the Dolphin says too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right. Because the start button. That was the beginning of the start button because you do everything from there. Those are neat times, I would say, in the history of computing for sure. Well, good times. So
you want me to sing it? See if we can get demonetized.
Well, we'd probably get one. We're not monetized. Two, we might get like delisted if you sing it.
Sorry to interrupt you then.
Oh no, that was great. I like it. So I did a fun little project this week. Well, several, but the one I'll talk about is I set up Octoprint on the Raspberry Pi. So it's called OctoPi for the Pi, and I'm now able to remotely watch and manage my 3D printer. That's over my shoulder here, and for those that are watching, I can turn it on and off here. Woo! Look at that. See.
When you said Octopi, I
There's
thought
something
you had,
alien back there.
I thought you had installed Arch Linux. Octopi.
No, Octoprint and Octopi is the Raspberry version of that. So I don't know what Arch Linux is doing, because I've never heard of that in the Arch world. But what's really neat is now I can be in the kitchen and I can make sure my 3D printer is still doing what it's supposed to do. I can see it in a little window of it, doing its thing. But also I can monitor the temperature levels, and I can even start and manipulate the thing remotely as well, which is pretty cool. I can then also, instead of using the SD card, I can just upload right to it, and then it'll manage the printer and everything. So it's pretty great. There is one little problem with the firmware on my printer. There's some sort of conflict that I got to resolve, but most things are fine. I'll tweak that out. But it's very exciting. I think it's a great project. So I think if you do have a 3D printer, I highly recommend adding the Octoprint system for it. You have to buy some hardware. It's probably about $70 in hardware-ish if you include the Pi. But I already had the Pi. So a little webcam, some ribbon cable, and then I printed off the parts needed to basically mount it all onto the printer itself. So, yes, it was. It's a neat project. If you're doing 3D printing, I know Eric, you said you don't have the patience to wait for something to print, but I have that thing going all the time. I'm using it constantly. It's it's like a dishwasher. It's on.
That's a household tool.
Maybe
it's not that it's not that I wouldn't have the patience. I could imagine myself being so excited by printing something and like clicking print and having it say this is going to be 12 hours, and I'd be like, 12 hours, come on. But that's still 12 hours much faster. That 12 hours is much faster than ordering something or the ability to create something custom. Like that's what I look at around my house. I'm thinking like, there's so many things I could make better by just being able to print, and not like massive things, but just little like brackets or little, things like that. I could see being so immensely valuable. And also for prototyping and stuff like that. If you had an idea to be like, well, let's try it out and see. So
I think it's amazing what you guys do with 3D printers, to be honest. And always, whenever Thomas is on here, I know for a fact that those headphones he's wearing, he 3D printed those.
Right.
If you remember. Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
a
have
lot of additional CAD work to actually make it turn out right.
Yeah.
You either got to get someone else's work or design it yourself.
I mean, I do. It's what I did for a long time for somebody else, and I'm doing it for me. But yeah, you are right though.
Awesome.
The waiting 12 hours, and then we design something, you print it, and then you realize that you messed something up, and so you got to modify it and then print it again. So yeah, there's 24 hours right there. But
so that's 24 hours
yeah.
plus the gap in between to fix it.
Right. But still, honestly, I can adjust my expectation, because it really would be magical. Honestly, I know I'm being a simpleton about it, but I do look at 3D printing as being a truly transformative. I mean, think about it. Like, yes, printing on paper was a big deal for a home office, like in being able to do projects and things like that. But the idea that you can print a physical object, I mean, that's some sort of like wizardry, right?
Yeah, kind of is.
Yeah.
It is. So
I think it is. I think it's just magic, to be honest.
It's a Star Trek replicator.
A very slow one.
Yeah.
Without the sparkliness. But the nice thing about 3D printing is, if you can imagine something and you know how to express it in CAD of some kind or Blender or something of along those lines, then it can be a real thing. I'm looking at one of my drawers that I have in the kitchen that has like all the kids' cups and plates, like all the plasticware stuff that the kids have access to, and the way I have it set up, like the plates kind of shift, whatever, and they kind of fall down. I'm thinking, so I've been drawing up some ideas but I only have so big of a platter. Something I can probably design something that I can have interlocking bits to it, and I can print off like one section at a time. So it's silly nonsense, but it's a lot of fun nonsense. So
That's good.
and then I did print the like extensions from, I think I talked about it last week, and so my printer is 60 millimeters higher for all you metric folk. I don't know what it is in inches, but then my tubs of filament just roll right underneath, and then it's kind of tidied up that area. And I have so much tidying up to do. If I were to turn on the lights here and move my camera around, you all of you would be appalled at the mess that I have, because I'm so I start one thing, then I start another, then I start another, then I start another, and then I try and finish them up.
Are you like a goldfish? And the bigger tank you have, the bigger you get. You just the more space you have, the more stuff you.
Yeah. So this week,
it's about 2.5 inches for you Imperial folks, approximately
2.5 inches. Yeah, that sounds right. 1 inch is 25.4 millimeters. I know that.
That's correct.
So I could have done that math in my head, but I didn't. So I apologize to all of you Imperial people. But anyway, I do promise that I will get things tidied up. But like I have this, the problem is I have a spark or an idea, and I'm like, I have to chase this rabbit, and so. So if you look, I got a bunch of alligator clips onto a buck converter over here right now, like right over there, and I have this idea about taking one of these like DeWalt battery USB things and actually taking advantage of the full voltage, so I can plug my USB-C computer into it and get the 20 volts out of it using a buck converter. I don't know if it'll work or if I'll blow something up, but I really want to try it. So
before you print these off in CAD, can you not have like a 3-dimensional colored drawing to see what you're printing before you print it?
Oh yeah, you can take measurements and everything, but sometimes
but you can still miss some things, can you? Yeah.
Yeah. You can. Okay. I miss things all the time. Like I'll make a little mistake here or there. Like I wouldn't catch the mistake until after I try to actually put it in place with the other parts it has to interface with.
Oh,
and that's where I see I made a mistake.
When the lock blocks don't lock.
Right. Or when the screw holes don't actually line up, or when the orientation is the wrong way because you have something else that's not interfering. So there are lots of ways to screw up. So almost an infinite number of ways to screw up and only one way to do it right.
Yeah, it sounds right. Not easy doing that stuff, especially when you got different shapes and stuff that you're trying to interlock or match up.
Can you recycle the material at all?
Sure, you can. You would have to be able to grind it up and then extrude it at the right dimension in just the right way and roll it up. It would require some equipment, but yeah, you could. I would actually rather. I am saving the plastic because I'm going to get a plastic injection molding machine, so I can.
Oh no!
So then.
Take up what the 3D printer won't.
Yeah. So that's the
sounds
plan.
Exciting.
But I gotta finish building my CNC first, so I can cut the things that I want to cut, and things are just kind of chugging along here in Cubicle Labs. I'm doing all kinds of crazy things. So
it's
enough about
stuff, I reckon.
Yeah, it is, and almost any one of you is free to stop by and check out the mess that is this life here. So, although I'd wait a couple of months because then I'll have more cool stuff at that time. All right, so probably enough of that sort of what you've been Linuxing. So we'll move on to our distro exploration, and for this week we're doing antiX Linux.
Made a poll in Telegram. How is the antiX Linux live session exploration going? 17% said antiX Linux live session is amazing. What an adventure. 13% said antiX Linux live session is okay. 5% said I'm not having a good time with antiX Linux live session. 22% said I'm not interested in trying. 17% said I'm unable to do the exploration. 26% said I'm not interested in doing the explorations in general. 0% said other.
Well, I want to know who the person is that, 'cause I'm sure it was one, that said I'm not having a good time with antics. Was anybody here?
Worked fine.
Not me.
Oh, it was Vince.
I put my hand up.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
No,
Look,
that's okay.
I saw your poll, Aris, at a particularly vulnerable time. I had installed, I had written the ISO to USB, but I'd made the decision to write it to a USB 2 device. And what I did was I tried to, because I wanted to then maybe try it with, we were going to do it with persistence, right? So I wanted to set it up so I could use it and plug it into a machine whenever I needed it to. So I wanted to update it and install all my apps to it. But I have a feeling it doesn't handle USB 2 speeds that well. And I happened to, it wouldn't write out all the changes that it made at the end when you tried to reboot. It either was taking a very long time or it crashed and I didn't have the time for it. So, and then I looked at Telegram, I saw your poll and I hit the button. But I may end up changing my mind later on. We'll
I've
see.
done that with a distro before. You can actually click on it and change it if you want.
Yeah.
It's all good. It's nice to have some variety because if everyone said they thought it was, amazing, what an adventure.
I was going down the road Vince was going down, but I set it aside for a while and then come back to it, ask some questions in Telegram, and I upgraded to it. It's okay. I didn't want to really give it a bummer.
I thought it was pretty great. But before we get into all that, we should probably go into some of the history. I don't know, Eric, if you want to read that.
I can.
I just pulled it from the antiX website and dumped it in there. So you probably don't have to read all that.
We'll see. I can get through pretty quickly. antiX is a fast, lightweight, and easy to install system-free Linux Live CD distribution based on Debian Stable for Intel-AMD x86 compatible systems. antiX offers users the antiX magic in an environment suitable for old and new computers, so don't throw away that old computer just yet. The goal of antiX is to provide a light but fully functional and flexible free operating system for both newcomers and experienced users of Linux. It should run on most computers, ranging from 256 megabyte old systems with pre-configured swap to the latest powerful boxes. 256 megabytes of RAM is the recommended minimum for antiX. Installation to hard drive requires a minimum of 5 gigabytes hard disk size. antiX could also be used as a fast booting rescue CD and works extremely well running live with or without persistence, as we just talked about, on a USB stick or frugal, frugal in a hard drive. Customize your own version with our live remaster tools to create snapshots of an installed system. At the moment, antiX 21 Grupt Yorum okay, comes as a full distro, which is a 1.4 gigabyte download, a base distro, which is around 800 megabytes, a core distro, which is around 440 megabytes, and a net distro, which is around 180 megabytes for 32 and 64-bit computers, which is nice if you have an old 32-bit computer. For those who wish to have total control over their install, use antiX Core or antiX Net and build it up from there. Note that the net version will need an Ethernet or wired connection. Present released antiX 21 versions was from October 13th of 2021. And there's if you go to the antiX website, there's the front page has a video from Dolphin Oracle, and he takes you through literally the first thing he says is, why would I want to run antiX, which is exactly what you might be asking. And so he does a great job of explaining that. And
so I put in the ISO options, but I guess you just did that in the
they have 386 and x64 of everything, base, full, core, and net, which is nice. Yeah.
So I went with the full myself. What did others go with there? Because the full wasn't very much, so I thought I'll just grab the full.
I did full as well. Yeah.
I got the antiX 21 full, And then any of this, all the stuff I downloaded, the tools and stuff like that, really didn't match Dolphin's video on how to set it up, because he had antiX running with this virtual machine running in it, trying to do antiX again. And I didn't get the same drop down menu to start, the live USB as he was showing on his end.
I think the
don't-
menus have all changed.
I was going to say he's using 19. Yeah, so in his video,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
I kind of figured after a while playing with it that was the case, and that we were just supposed to plug it in as a burned ISO and use the persistence box or folder that they give you in the home.
hmm
I went one step further though, and then burned the ISO onto a USB, took that burnt USB and then installed it on another USB. So I had total persistence.
There you go.
You could have done it all with one USB. Dolphin has a tutorial in which you burn the ISO to a USB, and then when you load that USB, you load it to RAM, and then you can burn with the loaded live USB a new USB, a
loaded
new
to
ISO.
RAM.
You can.
Yes.
Right.
Is my volume level okay, by the way?
Yeah.
It's fine.
Okay. So you can actually do that in Nix as well. There is apparently an option in the launcher where you can have Nix run off the RAM and then install it to your USB stick, which I think is pretty cool.
I believe any ISO can do this, but the thing is, all these little options, antiX makes it available because it has a little menu. You click on F something, F4 or something, and it shows you all the different options, including like how to do 2 RAM and all these things.
I did use the Dolphin tool for making ISOs. I went and got that from GitHub and played with that. Of course, that's a newer version, so it's a little different. But I use that to actually do what I just told you I did, except I think I use the DD mode.
Well, I set it up, and I guess I didn't realize. So the ISO that I'm running off of, I didn't make it. I guess maybe I didn't make it persistent. I saved stuff to it, but maybe I didn't test it fully.
There's a special folder that you put your persistent stuff in the home folder.
Oh, okay.
And it's labeled. If you put it in that folder, it'll stick on the USB. If you put it anywhere else, it probably will go poof.
No, I didn't do anything with the folder. What did I do? You save it within the BIOS menu, isn't it? So
How do you burn the USB?
I did the 2 USB thing. So I started up one USB and wrote what was it, live USB maker, and then wrote that to the other one. So did that, and then I set up persistence within the BIOS menu. So and then what you do is you save the persistence within the menu, and you also save grub, so you don't have to go back and reset all those options. I made a video about this once, and somebody said on my in my YouTube comments that that's a bit crazy because you've got to keep going and selecting, startup persistence and whatever. I didn't realize the grub save thing at that time, but I've come to realize because somebody made a comment about the grub save, and so all you have to do is just select the top one, and it just starts your persistence up straight away. And
if you just
automatically saves when you shut down.
if you just simply burn one USB with the tool, you will get one folder on here that you can put all your data and all your work on that will stay on there that's persistent. But that's all you get is the one folder.
It's probably got the folder there, but I didn't actually create it.
It comes created for you, and it's kind of labeled, it lets you know that that's what you're supposed to use.
So Dolphin made a comment on YouTube chat. He said, "You are both right. Collins is a traditional persistence option, which saves the root file system changes. And Dan has the live USB folder in the home folder that stores files on the unused portion of the USB."
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, there's a couple of ways of doing it. There's when it comes to antiX and MX Linux, there's multiple ways of doing things. They've got so many options.
Like I said, I turned another USB into a hard drive and tried that route too, and I wanted to see how that would behave. That one actually took updates in the whole 9 yards.
He also added
Okay.
that things in that folder are accessible on other OSs. So that's
Right.
the benefit of that folder.
Sorry, I used a Dolphin's tool, the LUMQT app image, to write my USB. And initially, when I booted it up after writing it, I didn't have persistence because I didn't know that you had to set it in the BIOS, like Colin was saying, with the F2 and F3 and F4, and then saving it. But then I figured that out, and it's one of those things where once you figured it out, it seems like it's really obvious and really easy, but I did not to begin with. And I got to the point where I've made system changes. I'd created my own username even to be able to log into, but that was before I ended up blowing it up. But it was working pretty good.
I was there too, Vince. I couldn't find the F1, F2, F3, all the stuff that was shown on the video. And I was starting to get frustrated. What am I doing wrong? I mean, I'm missing something here. And I'm like, oh, the heck with it. I'll just make a total persistence one and put everything on it.
I think the F1 and F2 has been changed to the advanced options now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not
That
F1,
one was.
F2. It's advanced options. I think the same. I think it's the same for MX and antiX. That BIOS selection now or startup.
Yeah. One thing I did want to mention is if you look through the rescue things and the tools that are on the live USB you first make, there's a thing called MemTest 86 on there. And it's a pretty elaborate program. It goes through your hardware and does some really significant checks. So if think you got bad RAM or something like that, there's a program on here that actually will test all your RAM.
The
That's
one
cool.
that MX ships and I think antiX is patched for Dell computers because the Dell computers have an issue with the regular MemTest, I think. So that's one thing to note.
Oh, I got a whole room full of Dell computers here. Thanks for telling me.
How old are those Dell computers?
One over there is like a 2003. The other one's like a 2008. This one's 2019.
You should end that with vintage, 2009 vintage.
You know, and they got 2013 HP over there. It's the oddball.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah, somebody just Vince just said we're saying BIOS, but we're talking about the boot up screen. I think is what we is the word we
Yes,
should
the
be
boot up
using.
grub menu
The
screen.
boot up screen
Boot
didn't
up
scream
grub
for
menu.
me.
Actually, I've got
Boot
a
up
question for
grub menu.
Dolphin. Is it a custom boot up menu? I don't think it's Grub, is it? I think it's a custom one for MX and antiX for Dolphin when you can answer it.
It looks like Grub to me, but maybe it's something else. Maybe it's Lilo or Lilo.
Well,
You
I'll
know,
switch and go
Prestige.
back to the regular ISO. We'll see what we get. I got to get out of the actual real burn job here. I always bring toys to the table.
Well, it's good. It's good to have show and tell.
The thing is, I got all these USB sticks all over my desk. The only way I can tell which one's which is where it's placed. Most of them are SanDisks.
Yeah, when I clean and organize, that's when I lose things. So
Me too.
So as far as the general user experience, I'm sorry, I'm jumping the gun there. Back up. We kind of covered the setup process. So did you add any applications to antiX Linux?
Yes, I installed GIMP.
Installed GIMP.
Yes, but that is on the double burn, the total persistence one I made.
I installed Cherry Tree, and
You
that's
see what
fairly
you
up
did now?
you
What the boss
You've
of the
angered,
house.
you've woken the
the dolphin.
So while Dolphin sets up, I was gonna say what he said in YouTube. He said that SysLinux is on BIOS boots and Grub is on UEFI.
Okay.
SysLinux. I was saying I installed Cherry Tree, and that's fairly up to date. I don't remember how I did that. Must have been in the command line, I think. I'm not sure.
Okay, I have this screen here. This is the one in the video, the screen that's shown that's got all the F numbers across the bottom.
Yeah, what's
I
it
don't
say
have no
down
F
there in the
numbers
lower
across
left-hand
the,
corner?
huh?
What's it say in the lower left-hand corner there? I can't read it.
It says UEFI. And
So
then
that's
it-
Grub.
Okay. Then just above that, it says press to edit, exit to go back. Then hit up, down arrow keys to, move it around.
Yes. So the old, what you saw in the 19 video on the website, we used to let you set on the when you boot UEFI, we used to set all the boot options, all the fancy boot options after you booted, and it would come up in a little terminal before it ever handed off to the system. It would ask for a bunch of questions and do it. That's what you see in the video. Now it's more like the Sys Linux one, which is what you used to see if you boot like in VirtualBox without UEFI or on a BIOS machine. You're going to see Sys Linux. You got all the little F keys along the bottom for the menus.
Right.
The new grub setup has those same kind of options, but they're in, as you saw, arrow key menus. And antiX, I don't know if you guys noticed, the antiX Live USB has an extra layer than the MX one does, because the full version, the 64-bit full versions, include 2 kernels. So you've got a 4.9 legacy kernel and a 5.10. It's not the Debian kernel, and AntiX makes their kernels from kernel.org sources, but so it works slightly different than Debian kernels, but very slightly.
So
But
as
that's what you get.
as it is, if I start this thing up from the live USB and I get the persistence folder, that's how it's supposed to work, right? There's no other mods other than the time, date, and keyboard.
Well, if you go on that menu, that boot menu, the grub boot menu, if you go to the advanced options, it's going to let you pick everything from a kernel to your different persistence options to a handful of other weird boot codes.
That's what, it's got arrows and equal signs pointing at it. I thought it was a dividing line rather than something you could click on.
We actually had a lot of debate on how to make those things. Felix on the MX team did a lot of work. He's like the master of grub, okay? And he created, I call him the grub meister. He's German, but
there it is. There's the top secret stuff that was missing.
Yes,
I was
that's
looking
it right
for.
there. That's the good stuff right there.
Scrolling all over the place, and this thing looks like it's just a dividing bar.
Yeah, that was the options Colin was talking about. So
Now I feel like
Colin's in quite a few of the persistence type videos himself. So he's like approaching master level over there.
Oh man!
But yeah, so that was easier to hop on here and say all that than it was to try to type it all out. I was
Sure
more typos
Sure.
I knew what to do with. So
Yeah.
We were just playing dumb, so you jump on. That's what.
Well,
Well,
I
no,
wasn't
no,
playing.
I'm sure there's one other person like me that misinterpreted that's out there.
yeah, so it's not 100, and I did a video today actually. My son is at Disney World, so I'm kind of me and my wife we have a quiet house for a change. So I actually said, "Wow, it has been since like October since I made a video," and I realized I've never addressed the new grub menu in any of my videos. So
they
that's
should
coming
have
up.
it say advanced options menu, and that would at least trigger in your mind that there's a menu in there.
It's weird, Dan. I don't agree. I don't disagree, but you're actually limited to how many characters will fit on the screen.
Oh, okay.
Particularly if you get down to, remember, antiX is not just fast and live USB, it's also old machines. And there are a surprising number of active antiX users using kit that you guys it would blow your mind.
We could take out
do
enough
tell.
equal signs in here to make up for that word.
But there's a lot of users still playing in 1024 by 768 and down resolutions. They only recently changed the default resolutions in grub for the grub menus to 1024 by 768. We fought it for one additional. We used to be 800 by 600 because of that. So you got to make a lot of considerations. Even now, things don't always fit on the screen when you get onto some of the older kit with lower resolution monitors. You just
I got an old
alt
Dell Latitude D630. That's got a really tiny screen.
Yeah, but that's a classic laptop.
That is, they made tons of those too.
The Latitude 630, they must have made 100 different iterations of that laptop. It's a nice machine.
That was my. I actually ran that machine for 10 years as my primary machine.
See, and you could, right? Because it was
Right.
it was a good machine.
Yeah. I had
Yeah,
8 gig of RAM on that, and I had the NVIDIA graphics, which was actually what encumbers it today. But yeah, that was a great machine. Very sturdy. It traveled around the world with me many times, got beat up, and still runs.
it's a tank, all right.
It's a sleek tank. It's not a chunky
I
tank.
I got a Dell 1537 Studio also, but I'm waiting for another one for parts.
Are we discussing anything here? We open with everything, or are we on?
We opened the magic, Colin. The
Well,
magic.
I was going to say like but about the application selection as I'm stuttering my way through. What did you think of the application selection already bundled in antiX? I think everyone did full here. Was there anything that you thought I heard GIMP was missing, Cherry Tree was missing for you personally?
No, Cherry Tree is just
Cherry
one of
Tree's
my
there.
things.
I
Oh, it's
think
your
I
thing.
found a GIMP that was in the main menu. It was from the application store.
No, I wanted to
Cherry
talk
Tree was
about.
there.
Was it there? Was it?
Yeah, it was under accessories, Cherry Tree. It was like the second
so
thing
I
I
didn't-
opened.
Oh, so I didn't install it. Geez, I get confused.
I don't know.
It was
I knew it was there.
Is
I'm
that,
getting ready
is
to
that
fire
in
up
there?
a machine.
Oh, that's in there by default. I didn't
Yeah.
realize that.
Yeah, it was in there
Wow.
by default. I think sometimes the way this structure is for the layout of the menus, I every once in a while was always looking for the same thing I know I just saw. And it took me a little while to get used to it. Once I got used to it, it made sense, and then I could find stuff.
A note-taking
Okay.
application. I've never used it before. I had to look it up.
So I've got GIMP in here. So is that in there by default, or did I install that?
No, that one you probably installed. It's,
Okay,
it's
that's-
in the package installer app, and it's regular Debian package. But I think by default, I think it comes with a little paint program called Empty Paint. It's MT, but like Empty Paint can.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, yes, I remember I did install GIMP because I did that to reboot to see whether persistence was working. I think that's why I installed it. Yep. So I want to talk about connect shares. I tried to connect shares and I was unsuccessful with connect shares. I think Samba is still a bit of an issue. I think for me, I don't know about anyone else, but Samba just doesn't seem to work for me because of certain things.
So to my knowledge, Connect Shares isn't going to work with, I think it's Samba 3, SMB 3.
Yeah, okay, that's
If you
probably
if
what
it's
it
if you're
is.
still set up on one, it'll work. But the guy who put that together, they basically had some issues during COVID, and he's gone for a while. He's a Londoner, I think, or around London somewhere. But so that probably hasn't been updated for the latest and greatest, the SMBs. So I can understand that. Now, I think you could browse shares with whatever the file, whatever the not Roxfiler file manager is. I forget the name of it. FM. I don't know.
Is that right?
You
It's
can set it
GIMP
up to do.
210.
You can set that one up to do SMB shares browsing, I think.
I normally do FTP. Can you use FTP?
I don't know if it'll do FTP. Probably. The thing's amazingly capable. I just don't know.
So I'm looking for zzz somewhere.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's in the system menu. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff in that menu.
Yeah, you're right. It's in the system menu.
But
Cool.
I'm not going to say it's going to work without a little configuring. It uses it used to be Space FM. It's a fork of Space FM, and Space FM.
Okay.
Space FM used a utility called UDevil for a lot of its mounting magic. I really love UDevil. We actually ship the command line UDevil in MX just because I like it, but because I can do that. but Space FM uses it as back end. So sometimes when you got to enable fancier features and you have to configure UDevil a little different. I don't know off the top of my head how it's set up in Annex.
I'm interested in knowing the package selection, like all the different software. I feel like the full has a lot of software on there. But what is the process that you're using to select the different bits? Is it like, do you have some way of knowing what people use most? And is that how you do that, or is it just it carries over from year to year?
Okay, so so I don't choose at all. but Anti does. And most of it's carryover. A lot of the work with ZZZFM came because one of the guys in the forum forked it, beefed it up a little bit, handed it off to antiX. The display manager, the login screen thing, it's a fork of Slim. I forget. I don't even remember the name. I don't even know how it's packaged, but it's a fork of Slim because Slim was more or less not maintained anymore. So there's a fork of that's set up. So basically, things get included because Anti likes them, or someone can work hard to provide them. Connect here is like that. There's a few things in the repositories that are like that. One-to-one. One of my favorites is SSH conduit, which lets you use secure SSH. I call it SSH tricks. Okay, so there's a display forwarding app in there. There's a like a secure VNC type thing. There's a way to share file, which is actually Colin. This is actually how I share files. I use the SSH file sharing. It's built in. I use the SSH.
Oh, okay.
Which I think uses SFTP as the back end, but don't quote me on that. But
right,
I use that. But as far as what gets in there, the only thing that I can remember in antiX that gets included because there's been arguments, right? For antiX, arguably for older machines needing lighter weight stuff, is LibreOffice. Why is LibreOffice on there when it traditionally your light word processors would be what, AbiWord or something like that? It's because Anti uses antiX for work, and when he travels for work, the live USB goes with him, and quite frankly, LibreOffice is more compatible than AbiWord on stuff, so he made it a priority that LibreOffice, at least, I think the base only has Writer, the full has the whole LibreOffice suite. At least LibreOffice is going to show up because he uses it.
Right.
Other than that, most of the package selection is utilities and things that people have suggested over the years and was small enough to cram onto the ISO.
Yeah,
it's
pretty
amazing how much stuff is in here.
Yeah. I was gonna say it's quite astounding. There's the sheer number of applications.
The theming choices are even overwhelming. Does anybody play with the theming?
So, I ain't gonna lie. There's a lot of theme choices. There's like 5 wallpapers, but there's 1,000 themes. Wallpapers are big. Themes for window managers are not large. So, you probably noticed there's IceWM, there's Fluxbox, and there's JWM. Can't remember if the Herb's Left WM is still on there or not, but that used to be on there as well. So antiX was originally a Fluxbox distribution back when it was based on Mepis. And then somewhere along the way, we started using IceWM because it had a more traditional menu bar type interface. Fluxbox is a little weird with the right click. It's like OpenBox. If you guys don't know it, Fluxbox is more like OpenBox. All the spiritual descendants of Blackbox, quote unquote. So, and then JWM is added. That's the one Puppy always uses. The traditional Puppy, Joe's window manager. Super lightweight. It's all XML. It's really fast. It has some quirks of its own, but it's usually included because it's got the traditional looking interface, but it's the memory champ. If you're really, really wanting to trim down every last megabyte, you're probably going to turn off the desktop icons and use JWM because it's usually the lowest.
So 256 is the recommended amount. What is taking up the largest share of that 256 megabytes
of RAM? I don't. Well, I'll tell you what. I actually just did screenshots today of this guy, which is an EEP PC. It's a 904HA. It's got a 1024 by 600 screen, USB 2.0. It's got the world's worst processor in it. The famous 32-bit single core with hyperthreading, by the way, which Intel Atom processor. It's a terrible machine. This was great though because you can beat it with a hammer and it doesn't break. Okay. This was the camping computer. This goes in the backpack. You can throw it at people. It survives everything.
Nice.
I put antiX 32-bit on this thing today, actually, and it is running at idle, first boot, 78 megabytes of RAM.
Wow.
Wow.
with Firefox running,
That's
but
a
with
double
not
wow.
like a regular. No, well, that no, 78 is just the system. With Firefox running, but without doing something hard like a video, it's running 380, 400 megabytes. So you're going to 256. Yeah, you can do it, but you ain't going to like it. You're going to be swapping the swap like all the time.
Thrashing.
Unlike a lot of live systems, antiX and MX too, but it usually happens more often with antiX. With antiX users, it's going to use, if your system's got a swap folder, it's going to use it. The swap partition, it's going to use it when you boot. Okay, and it'll use a giant. There was a time when on a 256 megabyte machine, you probably want a 1 gig swap partition for the install to even go through. It's a little better now, but it used to be pretty bad. Anyway, this thing running a YouTube video is still under a gig.
Wow, it can run a
on the
YouTube
32-bit.
video.
We get used
Wow.
to these big 64-bit. Yeah, I played my own video, but yeah. So 64-bit. We get used to 64-bit memory addressing, and they're big numbers, right? There's MX boots up first thing in the morning, and you run 700 megabytes. Okay, this thing 32-bit. I didn't go to swap. I had to really push it to actually go to swap. I mean, I could do it. I could open up 10 Firefox tabs and run 6 YouTube videos. It'd be a lousy experience, but it would work. But you asked about the package selection. There's a little utility in there called SMTube. I can't remember if it's under internet or if it's under multimedia. It's basically a special SM player for YouTube. And what it does, I think it uses some sort of download magic in the back. Anyway, it plays YouTube videos in an SM player, actually, I think in an MPV instance on antiX. But then you can watch a high resolution YouTube video if you wait for it to buffer a little bit. And it's much better experience than trying to play it through YouTube. YouTube is going to be jittery. I look like one of those stop motion raisin, guys. The audio plays okay, but the video is choppy. It's maybe 15 frames a second if it's that.
Okay.
But if you use SMTube, which is why the app's there, you can watch your motion video. Local video files play fine on this thing. It's actually kind of remarkable what you can do on a local machine. Web browsers are what kills you these days. I don't want to take over. Feel free.
No, that's good. So the move from 32-bit to 64-bit is what caused the expansion of RAM usage then?
Most 64-bit executables are much larger than 32-bit executables. They eat up more RAM, and they just do. The 32-bit Linux, the 64-bit Linux kernel uses more RAM by itself than the 32-bit kernel. It's just the way it is. You can take the exact same app, like I said, Firefox running in 400 megabytes. If I fire it up on MX, exact same Firefox, because he pulls. If you use the package installer to install Firefox, they pull the MX version of Firefox in antiX, because it ships by default with the Debian ESR Firefox. The 64-bit Firefox is much larger than the 32-bit version. You can push a gig pretty easy on MX. It gets up to around 800, 900 megabytes on antiX, on a 64-bit antiX. If someone else has done it, they can tell you. But so if you're going with an old machine like this that doesn't even support 64-bit, then 32-bit's your only option. But that makes a 1 gigabyte. This EEPC was originally 1 gigabyte. I put a second 1 gigabyte stick in there, but it doesn't really like it. I think it's mismatched somehow. If I go too far into that second gig of RAM, it kind of acts weird.
But act weird like the uncle you don't talk about at Thanksgiving kind of weird, or what?
Not quite that weird.
No.
But all the utilities in antiX are chosen to be as light as possible.
Okay.
And that's the main thing. So I forget what even the PDF reader, I think UPDF, I think is in there someplace. That's really light. It doesn't print PDFs, but you can view them easy enough. So there's all sorts of choices like that, except for LibreOffice and Firefox, because you can't really live without a modern web browser and word processor.
I found that the hardware support was very good too for what it is, for the size and all that. I mean, I'm running it right now on a 2019 machine, and my buttons for my volume on the keyboard make it work right. The brightness goes up and down. All the important things work. The Wi-Fi works, you know, and that's kind of amazing in itself. And if it does the same on older machines, that's really a bonus.
Well, I know all my Wi-Fi worked. My kicking white wireless wire modem in here was really just dragging the rest of my network down today, but it was working just fine.
What year did that EPC come out? The one that you have?
Oh man, I don't know. Let's see. I'm not sure that I know the date. Let's see what version. Oh well, XP came on it, so
Oh, so it's pretty old.
pretty old.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't see any date marks. The XP stickers faded, so I don't know.
Is that an
I was
EPC
actually
also?
running antiX when I got this. This was actually my main
Oh,
computer
nice.
for a while. What's that?
Vince has. It looks like an old netbook.
No, nice. Is that the Acer?
It's the EEPC as well.
Oh, it's also an EPC.
Yeah.
It's the one that's a 701 that came with Xandros.
Oh, the 701. That one's even weirder. Doesn't it? It's got like a, if I remember right, isn't that the one with like the 4 GB hard drive or something like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it originally came with 512 megs of RAM, but I upgraded it to 1 meg. What was it? What am I trying to say? 1 gig? Yeah.
1 gig. Yeah.
Yeah.
1 gig.
Yeah.
So it's funny.
so-
Those machines there are why is one of the original reasons why the antiX base ISOs came out. They
But
were.
do you think
they,
I could put antiX on this?
4 gigabytes is tight. You might get the base. I think the base one will probably still fit.
The last thing I had
full
running on it
we won't.
was Lubuntu 16.04.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. One of the original reasons for the antiX base ISO was to make it still fit on a CD-ROM. I don't think it still fits on a CD-ROM, but at one time that was still a target for us. And I think that thing will still install in a 4 gigabyte hard drive. I'll tell you what it will. Even if it doesn't, you can force the installer to override it with a couple of tricks. And if you use BTRFS with
What?
compression, because you can compress a BTRFS,
Wow.
you can cram a 6 gig, what should take 6 gigs down in under 4, and that will work. That's actually, someone actually wrote that into the installer 4 or 5 years ago for a small system like this, because he needed to cram it in there, and he figured out how, and he added it to our installer. I think the option's still in there, but I don't remember. But
Well,
yeah,
guess what?
you could
Trying this after.
you could probably cram it in there. Just get the 32-bit one, because there ain't nothing else is going to run on that thing.
Yep.
What is the what is the penalty with compression of ButterFS? Like the processing penalty or whatever.
I don't remember. I don't remember being that bad. It's kind of akin to like Squash FS. So if it'd be kind of akin to running live, probably.
Okay.
Not quite as bad, because you're still running off the hard drive, and in an EPC they're only USB 2 devices. The hard drive's faster than the USB.
Right.
On some other netbook class machines that use that MMC storage, a good USB 3 stick will outpace the internal MMC storage in a lot of cases, because they cram that MMC stick on the USB bus, and I got one of those too. It's kind of lousy too, but it's at least 64-bit.
So those EPCs, do they have removable hard drives inside of it, or is it like a soldered on?
No, so this guy here is like old school. So it's got a replaceable battery, and this there's a bay in the middle here. It's got real screws, no little snaps or spudger bars required.
Crazy.
It's even Phillips. It's not even like a security head. And you take this out, and you can got the RAM and the hard drive. I think you can get to the Wi-Fi chip too. I don't remember, but yeah, because it's the same compartment. The hard drive and the memory are in the same little area. And then they used to sell I took the battery out the other day, and they're like, "What the heck is that?" Oh, it's a removable battery. Laptops used to have removable batteries. They actually sold, this is a 4-cell. They actually sold a 6-cell battery for it, and it stuck out. It was like a handle. It came out Acer had one too. My brother actually has it on his Acer, but it stuck out so far out the back, it looked like a carry handle. You see people picking them up by the end of the battery. But it wasn't. It was just the battery sticking out the back.
The Dell Studio I got's like that too. The battery is actually the prop to put it on an angle so you can type.
Yeah, I think the Acer the Acer extended life battery was kind of like that too. It would come down a little bit and prop the thing up. I actually ran this thing with antiX 15 as a music server in my office. I took a pair of external speakers, plugged it into the headphone jack, ran an MPD daemon on it, controlled it from my phone. It looked like crap, but it sounded great in my office with, rock on the Friday afternoons for Friday afternoon music.
That's fun. All right. So were there any areas of antiX that anyone here found difficult?
I think I aired my problems.
Okay.
And I'm pleased with the results.
And I think Vince, he needs to change his vote, I think.
Yeah, I would just suggest maybe not running it off a USB 2 drive.
That's actually what I ran it off of, believe it or not. And I think it ran fine.
Well, it loads and boots. It was just writing out changes that I had trouble with. Like if I run a full system update on it, I think I had to write 800 megs to the drive, and when you exit it, and I think that's when it sort of bugged out on me.
So you probably noticed in the options, maybe you didn't because a lot of people miss it. There are two sets of persistence modes, and one keeps the file in RAM, and all the changes happen in RAM, and then it writes to it when you shut down. And the other one is kind of more traditional, where it's mounted on the USB stick. So if you do something like run all your Debian updates, right? Run all your updates, that file gets enormous, and you're right, Vince, you got to sync it back. And on a USB 2 device, it takes a while.
Yep.
Especially if it's a bad USB 2 device. I've got a Walmart special around here that I swear it stutters while it's being written. Just terrible.
That's awesome. I wouldn't say I found anything difficult with it. I think maybe I didn't fully understand the directions on the persistent piece of it, but that's a me problem. That's not a you problem. Is there anything that you think that sorry. Any other thoughts on antiX Linux?
I had fun playing with it. It's a very interesting piece of technology. The theming is really, because this is a 1080p screen, so I was trying to upsize stuff. And it's got small, medium, large, and huge for just about every selection you can think of. The only thing that I couldn't find was something to increase the icon size or increase the file manager box size. Matter of fact, I couldn't even drag and stretch the file manager box.
Well, it certainly made me want to try it on one of my Acer One netbooks. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple of those. They're not being used very heavily anymore. I got some newer machines for the kids to use, and so as much as the kids loved them at one time, they've kind of fallen out of favor.
Dolphin, is there a way to actually stretch the file manager box to make it bigger, or?
Yeah, usually the lower, it depends on what window manager you're in, but if you're in the default IceWM window manager, it's usually the lower left-hand corners.
Yeah, it's set to single click too.
Yes, it's single click by default.
It kind of throws you off when you get two of everything.
Hashtag save the mice.
I can't. Yeah, I can't see. There it goes. It finally took, but it took me a couple tries to get it to do it. Yeah.
There's a key combo for resize too that you can hold down one of the Control or Alt keys. I forget which one. I think it's Alt and a right click. I think will change the size.
I thought it was so cool that you included that mem test program in the ISO. I played with that thing for an hour and a half.
There's actually it's really weird. There's actually two versions of mem test in the boot menus, because there's a the regular open source one in the Debian repos doesn't do UEFI. So that we have on the UEFI side, we have the free but not quite open source version there. But when you're running on old kit, you got to have something, because when people are dumpster diving or just bringing back stuff back to life, or
you need this to go dumpster diving.
In certain parts of the world, this stuff's still common. Okay,
right.
You get a certain part. Everybody asks, why does you still have a dialer? usually they ask about MX. They don't ask much about antiX because it's kind of obvious with antiX. Why do you still have the dialer on MX? Because some parts of the world still have dial-up, and if you don't have an internet connection, you can't install anything. So you got to have something. So antiX does that, but yeah, there's somewhere in there. There's a DPI. The best you can do, because the window managers don't do high DPI screens very well. You can raise the DPI resolution up. There's a tool somewhere in the control panel for that. It's a little hokey, but it makes all the text at least larger so that you can read what you're seeing.
I actually like how the default system looks. To me, it feels like how computers did about 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So,
ISWM's got a real Windows 98 vibe going on about it.
Yeah, it really does.
It really does.
And I don't think they should change that. I think that should stay. So
Yeah, at the bottom, go down to settings, then go down to the next box, themes, and then it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Play around in those. You'll get a lot of different appearances from mostly the panel you'll notice and the menu. It's really interesting of how many different ways they got it colored.
Yes, some of them are canned themes that are just available that people have submitted over the years, or a lot of them come with the ISWM package. But there's a bunch of antiX custom ones in there, including the default one with the little antiX button on the button bar.
It looks like it does the job, and it's very lightweight.
Yeah, one of the things that people tend to get weirded out by is the fact that when you push a button in ISWM, there's no visual representation of a button being pushed.
Mm.
There just isn't. They're just icons. They're just pictures. And there's so you click on the menu, the only indication you have that the button goes down is that the menu comes up.
That's true.
We're trimming on. I mean, you don't get the low RAM usage with wobbly windows, guys. Okay, you gotta have. You strip her down to the bones.
The focus setting you got here, click to focus, explicit focus, sloppy mouse focus.
Yeah, that one's an old ISWM fun. I don't know what that means.
This is how tight you grab something with the mouse, how much space in the area is allowed.
Dan, did you say you wanted to change the size of your icons in the file manager? Is it?
Yeah, that was
If you
at the desktop.
if you right click and go to display, you've got bigger and smaller icons.
I don't see no display here.
Inside the file manager, you just right click.
Oh, inside the file manager.
Yeah.
Display. Duh. Excuse me for having a dingbat moment.
Did anybody try remastering their live USBs?
I did.
How'd it go?
It went well. I just did the updates and then I did the remaster and it went fine.
After the updates is the perfect time to do that because you get all that stuff crammed into the persistence file. You take that persistence file, when you remaster, you cram it back into the original file and make a brand new original file. And now all those updates that Harris did can go into the 2 RAM thing or however you want to do it. And that's actually really fast in certifications, and you don't have to run persistence to use remaster. So you could, if you got enough RAM, you can run all the updates and then remaster. And now you got a read-only system all the time that's impervious to hackers, right?
I'm kind of thinking it'd be good to get like one of those little USB drives, and because I have stuff already on those Acer One machines, but it might be fun to just have like one persistent that you can use and just use it from machine to machine, like just ad hoc and whatever. Because I really like how snappy everything is. So I mean, from USB 2.0, it took 40 seconds to boot. And to me, on an older machine, on this older machine here, it's a Windows Vista era, and I thought that was pretty impressive coming out of USB 2. So it's a very usable system running off of a USB 2 flash drive. I thought. I know Vince is much more impatient than I am apparently, but but it's really quite impressive how I like my KDE and all the flash and so forth that comes with it, all the lickies and chewies that you get from Plasma. But there's something to be said for the Spartan efficiency of antiX that I don't think is common enough.
If I had an older system and I would have been struggling to run, anything on it, because you can imagine some of those older systems. I honestly don't. I donated most of mine, finally figured that they weren't doing anybody any good sitting in a pile in my closet. But if I still had those and I was struggling to run something on it, this would be like, you know, a breath of fresh air to be able to just, hey, look, a window opens when I click something, because it can be so frustrating on slow systems, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot of Pentium 4 and Pentium 3 antiX users,
Really?
and those, especially the Pentium 4s, the three gigahertz Pentium 4s, they're right at the end. They're and there's even a set of Pentium 3s that have PAE extensions, but they weren't advertised. So if you can even do some tricks where you force the PAE instructions to be used, even though the chip says it's not capable. It actually is. It's not all P3 parts, but there's several. A lot of them are more capable than the Atoms when they came out. The original Atoms, the actual dual core 64-bit Atoms are more capable, much more capable than these old 32-bit single core Atoms. And antiX runs pretty well on this machine. I would guess it would run very well on something in the P4 era. And yeah, that snappiness is you know, there's no flash. Andy calls it, I don't know if anybody mentioned it, the guy that runs this, Anti-Capitalistas, is a lot online name. Read into that what you want. I don't care. He wants it lean and mean is plastered on the website someplace. And even the live USB, there's even a disable command for disabling services. Now, it used to disable more services than they do now, because as time has marched on, more and more, you used to be able, like in the antiX, I don't know, 12 days or something, you could actually turn off dbus. Most things would work. That's really not the case anymore. You kind of got to have dbus. So you can turn it off, but they don't do it by default anymore. So you can turn off different services out of the box, just right from the boot parameter. If you read through some of the documentation is there. Just lean and mean is what it's supposed to be, and I think it is. And when I need to use a live USB, it's usually when I go to grab. I like I'd like, obviously, a big MX fan. I've got MX installed on all my machines. I'm MX developer. That antiX Live system is pretty kick-ass, okay? And it's the most flexible thing going. Sometimes the flexibility leads to complexity, but man, it works when you need it to on anything.
This was my MX antiX test machine. It's an old Asus or Asus. Yeah,
Whichever.
If I haven't started that up for the longest time, it'd have to have probably MX17 or something on there. I think I just used to test MX on that and antiX as well. It was a really good test machine. It's old and it's just goes to show how good some of these systems are. It's just one of those.
I think I have some Pentium 4, Pentium 3 Optiplex machines somewhere. Might be fun to play with antiX on that. Now, antiX compared to MX for 32-bit, how close would they? What would you say that the memory usage difference?
AntiX is a lot less than MX on 32-bit. I mean, we've got the 32-bit XFC ISO. I would guess it. I haven't started that one up in a while outside of VirtualBox, but on real hardware, I would guess it's running at least twice the RAM that antiX is out of the box.
Okay.
Now, once you fire up a browser, things get it's more or less the same, but MX ships with a lot more services running than antiX does. Then we've got Samba on there. We've got stuff for Bluetooth. antiX doesn't ship with any of that out. I mean, you can install anything you want, but it's not there on the live USB running. Because I don't think Bluetooth's on there running. But so a lot of people put a lot of the memory usage things. Well, oh, XFC is too heavy. Oh, KDE is too heavy. Oh, you want a Window Manager because it's light. But if you load the thing up with services running in the background, you can make anything a little heavier than it needs to be. Even if you take our 32-bit Fluxbox release, antiX is it's such a hard word to say. antiX 32-bit releases will run under the MX releases by quite a bit.
That's interesting.
I think you'd expect MX to have more sort of general purpose stuff running, right? I mean, the mandate of MX is more a general purpose desktop than it is to be, as lean as possible.
We
right?
might be light, but we're not trying to save old machines. We're just trying to.
Right.
We have a slightly different use case.
You want to be performant, but it's not at the cost of making it less convenient to use necessarily.
What are some of those services that add weight are typical that with the conveniences? I imagine every service has a convenience that comes with it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of what we would have that wouldn't be there. The Samba stuff's one. It's not particularly heavy, but it's there. GVFS would be a good one. So antiX doesn't use the virtual file systems. The file managers do the mounting. However it is they do the mounting. There's not something lurking in the back end. So you don't have the GVS. I don't know how to describe this because a lot of people don't realize there's a virtual file system sitting underneath almost just about every file manager on a desktop environment in Linux. AntiX doesn't have that. There's a lot fewer things that automatically happen. Auto mounting happens now. There's a little daemon that handles auto mounting of USBs when you stick them in the drive and CDs, things like that. Let's see what else. We got a lot. The Bluetooth stuff is another one, and we have a lot more apps running by default in the tray. Like we got the unmounter tool, we got the clipboard manager tool, network manager is heavier than Conman, things like that. So every little piece, and XFCE itself has got more bits and pieces running than AntiX would. So we got a lot of layers, more than, and even then we're less than some other distributions that are running full desktop environments. But there's just more stuff. There's more stuff running. Services and I guess it's not all services and applications.
I think if I did have an older system, I would probably try MX first, just to see, because I think it would be, XFCE would be a better experience overall. It's just a.
That's a little more traditional for sure.
Yeah, just like a day-to-day, daily driver sort of system. And if MX didn't seem to run very well, then it's nice to know that antiX is there as an option. Or if you had something that was a little more purpose-focused, purpose-built type system, I could see antiX being an advantage. Because if you're not running, that's the problem. I think that a lot of, I'm guessing this, not having been in this position, but I have to imagine that producing a general purpose desktop operating system is kind of like got to be the jack of all trades and master of none type of situation where, you can't anticipate what everybody's going to be doing to a certain degree. I mean, everybody's going to use a file browser, or a web browser, yada, yada, but you don't know exactly what they're going to be doing with the system. So you kind of have to cover all your bases. Whereas, and there's a certain level of expectation that I think someone might have for a modern operating system versus something that might be a little more focused. And, we've talked about other distributions on here where they might not have been like the best everyday distribution, but they were probably really good at that more focused use. So
yeah, well, for sure. Nate, I'll give you a good example of something that's running on MX that's not running on AntiX, even though if you look at the toolbar, you might think there's one running. The USB unmounter tool on MX is a little app that runs in the background. It's just a toolbar icon, or a sys-tray icon. When you click on it, it launches a little thing. It lists all your drives, and if you want to eject one, you can. Okay, fine. It's kind of like the safe removal tool on Windows. That was the idea. AntiX has something that's very similar, except it's not actually running. There's an icon on the bar that just launches an app that does that at the same time. It's a little clunkier, but it's fast, and it doesn't take up any RAM at all because it's not running. There's nothing running. When you unload the drive, it closes and it's done. If you want to unload another drive, you got to start the thing. You got to click the button again and start it back up. But it's so fast, it's almost as fast as the one that's running all the time. So there's an example of how they pull tricks and get away with things. That's 14 megabytes of RAM right there. I just happen to know that one. That's 14 megabytes of RAM.
Wow.
Which on AntiX, if you're talking about RAM limited machines, you start talking about real percentages. That's like, a percent of RAM on a 1 gig machine.
That's pretty crazy when you think about it.
Just listening to a podcast about the moon missions and how little addressable memory they had in that computer, and you just think like something that takes 14 megabytes by today's standards, obviously that's not very much with our much larger machines and more capable machines, but to just think about the idea that 14 megabytes certainly not that long ago was a lot of memory. And we've come to, I don't know, a lot of us, like you said, you know, a lot of people around the world don't have access to killer modern machines that a lot of us are running. And for us to just have, you know, I've got, excuse me, Element, Discord, Telegram, Zoom, you know, I've got all these different things running right now, resident in memory, let alone the desktop, let alone, you know, everything else on top of it. And the idea that, you know, that a distribution still exists that it accommodates hardware that is lesser than that, you know, it is a great thing. It's a laudable goal, and I think it's probably very frustrating to try to shave off those last little bits of memory. It's like, what else can I cut? You know,
There have been discussions amongst antiX developers about 0.5 megabyte files in the init-RD system, because we can really get that down to 3 megabytes. You know, it's actually remarkable when you define the problem for MX. The problem is different. The MX, the problem is we want a well-rounded system that anybody can install. antiX is we need the smallest, fastest thing possible, and you make all kinds of different decisions. Now, it's not small like Tiny Core Linux is small. It's got some convenience features in it,
Right.
but and you don't have to reinstall the operating system every time you boot it up. But that is part of the mentality of how antiX gets put together. And I actually started with Slackware, but I quickly moved to Ubuntu, but Ubuntu was too heavy for my laptop that I was using at the time, which only had 128 megabytes of RAM, had a floppy disk, big honking monitor. It actually had the greatest monitor in like the history of monitors. It was huge but the laptop was enormous. So it was, I guess, a dual-edged sword. They called it the 3-spindle machine because it had a hard drive, a CD drive, and a floppy drive. So this brought me to antiX because I had Ubuntu running on that. I think it was Ubuntu 6 running on that, and I could type faster than AbiWord, which is what they shipped at the time. I could type faster than AbiWord could display the characters. And I didn't know anything about Linux at the time. And what was going on is I was constantly living in swap. Okay. It was just bad. So very nice, I presume, woman in the Ubuntu forums. I don't actually know. She was great. If you're a he, I'm sorry. She led me to Fluxbox on Ubuntu. So I went this whole rigmarole of running Fluxbox on Ubuntu. And there, now my measure, my unscientific measure was, could I type faster than it could display characters? And I couldn't. Well, that got me to antiX, because antiX was Fluxbox at the time. And that got me to YouTube videos, and that got me here today. So it was a very windy process. I'm kind of babbling. I'm sorry.
You're not. You're not at all.
No,
Because
it's
this is exactly how
I'm
all of
sucking
us,
it up, man.
this is how all of us do come into this, right? We, you know, either you have a tech background and you know about Linux because it's just something that's out there, or you have a machine that you're unhappy with. You know, I know many people were like Windows users that were just like, I can't stand this anymore. There has to be some alternative to this. Hey, what's this Linux thing? So that's another pathway. And so that to me is always interesting to know how people found their way through. And honestly, Dolphin has taken it further than a lot of us do, where he's actually gone into developing and giving back in a much more concrete way than I think I certainly have. So anyway, you're not battling. It's all interesting. So
It's a good story.
keep babbling.
Yeah.
Got some dead air to fill. I'm your man.
No, I think that's cool because I think the first computer I used with Linux, I think I had 128 meg of RAM. It was a AMD K62 machine. And when I got that, I thought, wow, this thing is fast.
AMD K processor. Wow.
Yeah. K16.
Yeah, I think
Woo! That takes me back. Yeah.
I think this thing I had was the Duron version of that processor, the cheap version. It was like, that was when Intel was rolling out the Celerons, so AMD needed a cheap version, so they made the Durons. I forget what the big boy processor was on top of the Duron, but
My old desktop PC's got a AMD 3000 XP in it. That's what they call it. I think it's Athlon.
oh, the Athlon XP.
It's fun because the
It's so old I can't remember what it is.
Like the early days of Linux for me, going between the different desktop environments. Well, the two that I knew of at the time, GNOME and KDE. That initial exploration of Linux, I think there's always something like kind of magical about that time when you didn't really know what you were doing, but you just kind of like bumped into the walls on your way through. It was just a lot of fun. I don't know. I really enjoyed that time. I think it was kind of exciting. This new thing. It didn't do everything that you expected. Your like I said, it wouldn't do everything Windows would do. Games especially. Yeah. But it was just really exciting that time of the earlier times in Linux, I should say. I mean, it was still 10 years into it, really.
For me, it was the first time a driver compiled correctly. Okay, yeah. So that old laptop didn't have Wi-Fi, so I got one of those PCMCIA cards and slid it in, and it had some Ray-Link part in it that wasn't in the kernel. And back then, it was MAD Wi-Fi drivers, and the MAD Wi-Fi drivers weren't particularly great at that particular moment. And so this is actually how I got started with tutorials, is me and another guy in the forum, antiX forum, we're trying to figure out how to compile these stupid things on antiX in a way that regular humans could do. And I forget, I don't know if he wrote it or I wrote it, but we were both beating around back and forth trying to get this thing put together. And I think we're both still running antiX on something, so we're still around, both of us. But those Ray-Link drivers, the first time those things fired up and your Wi-Fi came to life, it's like, okay, I'm sold. This is magic.
It was fun.
This is the most amazing thing I've ever done in my entire life. Yeah.
What is Build Essential? What is that?
Yeah, I know.
I remember compiling my first kernel because it was like when I got that D630 that we talked about earlier, it had 64-bit, capabilities, and the kernel at that time that came on Mandrake didn't have all the things. So I would download the latest whatever kernel and build it, build the kernel. It took so long to do, but it was so exciting to get to that point where things actually worked. I don't know how to do it today. It's been too long. But Prophetic, you have a great question. Do you want to bring that up?
So the question I had was, you mentioned like antiX being like lean and mean, and we have MX that's making a well-rounded system, which I think it's done a great job of. How was the process like with systemd, Snap, getting that enabled? Was it a big fight or a big debate, or was this kind of like a slam dunk easy? How was that navigating that? Because I know that those kind of waters can be kind of polarizing.
Okay, well that's an interesting question. So on antiX there was never a debate. antiX was going to be systemd free, and it is, and it goes out of its way to be systemd free and still use the Debian repositories. That is not particularly easy. They host a whole bunch of their own packages. I think there's some swapping going back and forth with some of the Dev1 packagers a little bit. There's even a little bit of Gentoo floating around in there with some things, because one of the guys, some ideas from Gentoo, because one of the guys was a Gentoo user. There were various philosophical reasons for that. Most people thought it was a little complicated and that Debian jumped a little early. I don't know. I don't care. So that was antiX, and antiX still is. And they offer more than one init system. You can have sysv init and you can have run it on antiX. Run it. I haven't really run it much beyond just trying it out. On the MX side, MX is still old enough that systemd wasn't everywhere when it started. That was, I want to say Debbie and Jesse. Well, what came after Wheezy? I think that's Jesse. Debbie and Jesse used sysv init by default. And so when NMX 14 came on the scene, which was kind of towards the tail end of Jesse's run, we were 32-bit only, and we were still using sysv init. So when we jumped to the next version of Debian had systemd shim, and this was a much easier path to sticking compatible with Debian repositories than running a systemd, what we call the systemd free repo on the antiX. If you look in the sources for the app sources for antiX, you'll see the systemd free repo in there. MX we didn't want to run that, so we went with the shim route. And that gave us systemd and sysv init out of the gate. but we stuck with sysvia init as the default. Couple of reasons. One, some of the MX developers prefer sysvia init because they know it. Okay, and that's fine. I respect that. And also the antiX live system at the time, and today to an extent, but at the time then for sure, didn't work with systemd very well at all. Things like saving the persistence files would not happen without some kind of magic in the background. You could use the static ones that, well, you couldn't, because at the time static wasn't there. We actually did the RAM thing first. The mounting the persistence files on the stick came later. So every time we develop a new MX, I ask the question, sysv, systemd, here's what we got to do if we want to go systemd, here's what we got to do if we're going to stay systemd. And the last time it was really serious was when Debian dropped systemd shim out of the repo. When the start of the great Debian and init diversity debate started, and Debian just said, well, we'll be diverse, but we're not really. You've heard my rant on that on other threads, never mind. So we put out a bug bounty for systemd shim to update it to the latest version of systemd. And a very nice guy came in. We got a lot of slack. We didn't have any money, right? Because we're a club project, so we didn't get a lot of money. So we get a lot of slack from developers saying, this is like a half hour of my time. I'm not doing this. Okay, why'd you comment? Just keep going on. You're not the person we're looking for. We're looking for someone with a little Linux love here. So guy comes along. He says, I can do that. I said, okay. He does it. Works great. So that was MX 19. 19 is the first version where we have systemd shim and Debian doesn't. And 21, same thing. We called him. He said, yeah, actually, I think it's the same patch. He just had the line numbers just changed. So he redid the patch for 4.10.2. So we still have, as far as I know, we're the only ones that do. And the handful of distributions now that are strangely based on MX, and don't get me started about how that happened. I don't know. That's crazy. But so we don't really have a debate in MX yet. We did, and then we sidestepped it with the shim. So now you get both. And one of the little things that I've kept under the radar in MX 21.1 is that we push some updates that will let the antiX live system on MX, not necessarily on antiX, but on MX, at least mostly work with systemd. It's not 100%. There's some choices you have to make because systemd, I can't get it to give us a console when we shut down. So some magic like dynamic persistence saving doesn't happen, but other things can. And I've even got a spin on my private SourceForge page that's a systemd only spin that does work. It's not official. It's mine. It's a play project, but it is there. It helps some people who have problems who want to run snaps. We don't have any dog in the hunt on snaps. We really don't care. We don't ship it by default because snaps don't work on the live system. They just don't. AppArmor complains. So I think there's an auto rule in the snap. I'm going to get really in the weeds. The snap AppArmor rules, there's a few things that get auto generated, and they make some assumptions that screw with the live system. And because the live system gets loaded first, snaps won't work. It's weird. It's the way they use loops to mount the various snaps. It's really great if you look at DF output on a system with a whole bunch of snaps. You got a whole bunch of loop mounts, and it's all the snap things. Well, the antiX live system uses loop mounts, so we run afoul of that. Flatpaks mostly work. There's no religion to it. It's just what works and what doesn't. You need systemd for snaps. You need systemd to be running to use snaps. The live system doesn't do either one, so no snaps on MX by default. You can add it. I've got them running on mine right now. I don't have any snaps loaded, but I got snapd. If I just mostly because I got to help people who want to snap. But so antiX systemd free, it's gonna be because that's part of their mission. MX is a little more murky, and we've just kind of sidestepped the question for as long as humanly possible. It's there though. A lot of people say MX is systemd free. It's not. It's in there. It's in there, and it's in there all the way. It's just not used for init by default.
Yeah, a lot of other projects can take a page out of MX playbook with like not getting religious about certain things and having things have a home one way or the other. I know sometimes that can mean double the work and it's not always viable, but with some creative thinking, and that bounty thing was awesome, and some Linux love from people. Cool things can happen. So it's always cool.
I'll tell you this: System-D does some things that SysB doesn't. Obviously, it's the system daemon, right? It does some different things. One of the things it does is if you boot certain Intel chipsets with System-D, the brightness keys work fine. But if you boot that same system on SysB init, the brightness keys are backwards. I don't know why that is. I just know that it is. And if people want to make their lives easier and boot System-D, I don't particularly care. And I want to let people that want to base their systems on MX and use snapshot and all the cool things that the antiX Live system enables in both antiX and MX, then okay, we got to support it to some level, and that's what we do. We even softened our stance. We had a wiki that really sounded like we were like hardcore. Don't use it. We won't recommend it. That's because we didn't know what we were doing when we wrote it. We softened it 2 weeks ago because we even forgot about the wiki article, and we went back and softened it up. It's like, it's in there. Don't worry about it.
On Annex, the brightness keys are as they should be.
Depends on the hardware, Dan. Depends on the hardware. My S21E, the brightness keys are backwards. It actually can depend on the kernel. There's something in the Intel, the i915 driver that runs the video on the kernel level. That's where the bug is. And there's actually a boot parameter that you can pass to switch it, which is what I normally do. But and because System-D doesn't care about the boot parameter, whatever it doesn't care about it. So I just pass the parameter and don't worry about it. But I think that even shows up in the live boot menu somewhere. There's a reverse backlight. But if you on some machines, if you boot with the 4.19 kernel, the brightness keys are fine. If you boot with the 510 kernel, they're backwards.
The key is that the keys work. You just got to remember what to push.
Well, that's fair. It makes it weird though when the screen goes to darken when it's not being used for a while and it gets brighter.
With Linux, I've come to accept what I can get. If it's backwards, okay, I can live with it. If it don't work at all, I can't live with it.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Hey, Dolphin, has there ever been a discussion about joining forces antics with Dev1?
I can't tell you. I don't know. Every now and then people wander into the forums and say you should hook up with Dev1, and usually the answer is, well, maybe not. I don't know. I can't speak for Anti on that one. Antics, he's the lead dev for Antics, and I really can't speak as to whether he's had any discussions. I tend to think not, but who's to say?
What's Dev1? Can you share something about that?
Dev1's the System-D free Debian.
Yeah, I think the Peppermint guys are pursuing that avenue.
I mean, it's fine. You go into their repositories and you start to find certain things that aren't there because of the System-D integration. But it's a big project, I guess. I don't know. I've talked to a few of them. A lot of them are, some of their packages are with the Debian and Net Diversity folks, and so there's some interplay there.
That's cool.
The hot button question here is, when are you going to put the panel on the bottom?
The panel at the bottom.
Okay.
For MX.
This is a big argument for people.
Panel at the top, maybe.
One. I know you're in a hot seat.
Would
now,
anybody remember MX without that vertical panel? I don't know. I don't think so. I think that maybe now it would be safe to move it down. But when we first came on the scene, this is the screen it was designed for. Not this particular computer, but netbooks, the old netbooks. Mm-hmm. Because you got lots of screen space horizontal, but not very much vertical on a 600 pixel machine. So the original layout was for a vertical bar on one of these kinds of machines. Jerry 3904, the guy that does the Fluxbox videos, it was his netbook that was laid out on. So on the XFCE, if I have my druthers, probably never. Sorry, but I got it running vertical right now. I can't look at a computer now with a horizontal panel. It drives me absolutely bonkers not to be able to move that panel to the left. But that's why I can't use KDE.
You can move it to the left if you want.
I guess you can. I don't know. Our KDE spin, the KDE release and the Fluxbox release both have traditional panel layouts. But
I give it to you though. KDE left panel isn't the best, at least with notification.
I seem to recall it being a little weird somehow. I don't remember
Yeah.
exactly what it is. You used to be able to put the Windows panel on the left, and that was terrible.
Yeah.
It takes up it's a really wide bar on Windows.
It is. It's really wide because that stupid
Yeah.
start button doesn't rotate.
You want to hear something really funny? When I was using Windows, I never even considered moving the panel. It always stayed on the bottom throughout every Windows version I had.
Now, I mean, when you got a nice big monitor, it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't bother me at work when I'm doing my cat
Well,
thing or
back when I was
whatever.
using Windows, there was no internet to ask the question. You had to buy one of
know
these
any
big,
better.
thick books at the bookstore on how to use
for
Windows.
dummies.
So Dan, I'm the guy who bought the shareware package for Windows 3.1 that got rid of Program Manager and ran, I don't know, this weird taskbar looking thing. And as I come to think about it, it was running up the left-hand side of the screen. So I've been doing this since like 1995. So I don't think it's changed anytime soon.
Me
Yeah,
too.
Just stick with it.
I'm that old.
I remember that Windows.
I go back to DOS.
I remember that Windows wasn't very good with the panel on the top. Something about how the buttons, like the window went under the taskbar. I think it
Right.
wasn't very good prior to like maybe XP. I'm not sure if XP was still good. I think XP was good.
XP was slightly better, but was a lot better. I had a XP. My netbook actually ran XP with the button bar at the top for whatever reason. But a lot of apps have trouble going under the bar instead of staying on top of it. Prophetic asks the hard-hitting question. System D and the left-hand panel. These are like the holy grails in the MX world.
That's fun. But we are at time, and I want to just hit a couple things off real quick. One, thank you, Dolphin, for showing up. Or you're not going by that right now, but whatever. And I do appreciate the work done on antiX. I think I learned some things tonight about antiX that I'm going to try some, like, I got some ideas in my head, some ways of implementing it now. I'm going to be doing that, and it might displace Puppy as the just to irritate Prophetic. It might displace
the
Buddy.
Peppy.
How dare you go there?
Puppy's gonna hit the road.
Although I think maybe it might be fun to do maybe a comparison, a side by side of Puppy versus Antix. Which one?
And why Puppy's better? Yeah, that's a great video title.
Man, don't put Puppy in the animal shelter.
I'm just saying that to say that,
This
or
hates
maybe FreeDOS.
Since you mentioned that the clock has started for Puppy to get its version of Ubuntu 22.04.
It's true.
What's
It's
crap, man?
Puppy is an interesting animal. What we do distro explorations, I think it's about every 4 weeks right now. So if you have any suggestions, please send me an email, suggestions@linuxsaloon.com, or you can tag distro exploration in the Telegram, Matrix, Discord, and Discourse forum, and what your distro suggestion would be. And Steve isn't here, unfortunately, but he would tell us that next week is our open mic night. So we're going to take topics from the Discourse forum, pretty much anywhere around the interwebs of interesting things to talk about. It can be news topics, it can just be, something crazy that, maybe Dolphin's doing now with the panel on MX Linux. It can be anything, or the history of the left side panel. So if you have any suggestions for topics, you can send me an email, also suggestions@linuxsaloon.com. Just say open mic night suggestions, or you can, again, hit the Discourse forum as well. I'd like to thank everyone for being here. This is a great discussion. We didn't get to any news from This Week in Linux. Michael always supplies a great flight of topics, and although I read through them all, we don't have time to go through them. So we'll kick that can to next week and maybe make some of these some of the open mic night topics. Because actually MX Linux 21.1 was in the news to talk about. But next week, let's see. Let me get to the end here. I get so many notes here, and I'm getting down here. So just some quick stuff to plug. Rick isn't here, but he's not a Linux guru. He does a Wednesday night stream. Mark Yu also not here, but he does the Atlanta Linux Users Group. I assume they're meeting tomorrow at 3, but you can check that out, the Atlanta Linux Users Group. Steve's very own is not going to do a show tomorrow, so you are all going to be bummed out Sunday morning. At least that was what the email said, unless something changed, Vince.
Last I heard, he's been stuck at work, so unfortunately he
Okay.
might have to cancel the show tomorrow morning.
Oh
Okay.
man, I'm bummed out.
So
I get up just for his show.
I like having a show on while I'm making breakfast.
Yes.
And I reach over to the computer and I just say something obnoxious to him. It's great.
I like
Destination, yeah.
I like to
Destination Linux.
just see him period.
Destination Linux is streaming live tomorrow afternoon at 1 p.m. Eastern. Linux User Space, they are between seasons right now, but you should check out the last episode and also their Discourse forum. Discord. Their Discord is very active, so check them out there. Linux Out Loud, the podcast I'm in, where we're doing a discussion piece on something that Prophetic put in the Discourse forum concerning, is the desktop a dying animal, basically. So that became the entire show for Linux Out Loud. So Prophetic, make sure you check that out and tell us we're wrong. And if you want anything more on me, go to cubeglate.com. I do stuff. So I want to thank you all for being part of the conversation, both the Zoom meeting and the YouTube stream, as well as everyone for watching the show after the fact. I want to thank everyone involved in making Linux and open source tools possible for us to not only have this pretty information-packed conversation, but also to have fun and enjoy our technology. You know, people like Anna Rita, who's in the chat every week. You know, she has older technology, and it's because of Linux that she can continue to participate. And I think that's super awesome. And I love the fact that Linux truly puts personal back in a personal computer. So thank you all for stopping by. Be sure to tip your developers, and please remember to Linux responsibly. Until next time, see yas.
Bye.
Hi, everyone. Till
Bye.
next week.